tear, it falls and hits the ground. A tree, it falls without a sound. A bird, it calls and sends you home. A man, he sits in the cold all alone.
Hi, Karen. Welcome to the Joy of Sunflowers. Thank you so much for joining us. And please tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much for having me, Ella. So I'm a naturopathic doctor in Ontario, Canada, and I practice like family medicine. So I see a variety of health conditions in my practice. In the fertility world, I started as a practitioner and then turned into a patient after we suffered our first miscarriage in 2013. And then carried on to try to conceive. We're not successful with that. So then 1 year later, we went through fertility treatments. We did multiple rounds of IUI, 2 rounds of IVF, and then ultimately built our family through adoption. So it all ended beautifully, but the journey was a lot, as many of you know.
Let's go into that. So starting from the beginning, even as far as, were you always knowing you wanted to have a family, or were you one of those ladies who, weren't sure until they got married or until they saw the guy and they're like, yes, I want to have babies with you?
I always knew I wanted to be a parent for sure. And it was important for me to kind of just get my business started first. So it wasn't like I got married when I was young, like 22. And so, it wasn't a top priority at that time at all. And so, a few years and like 1 or 2 years into my practice, we were ready to start a family. And so it was exciting, right? Like it was like the first or second month we tried. We got pregnant and it just was like, okay, wow, things are just kind of lining up and going well. And then 9 weeks later we did end up like having the miscarriage, and that kind of changed. That was like the start of this whole massive journey that you wouldn't wish on anyone, but somehow we make our way through. But yeah, I did always know that I wanted to be a mom, that's for sure.
So with that first miscarriage, how did that play out, if you sort of remember any of the details?
When I just remember that we were going for a dating ultrasound, and um, and then I could just tell by the ultrasound technician, like they wouldn't allow my husband in the room. And I think they wait for the heartbeat, and then if there's a heartbeat, they have the partner come in the room, which I don't understand the logic of that, but either way, I could just sense that something wasn't right. And then I got a phone call later on that there was no heartbeat. And so then I shared that news with my husband when he came home from work that day. And it was pretty traumatizing, honestly, at the time. Like it was, of course it's common. It does not like change how impactful that experience is. It was a major loss. Like, when you're pregnant and you're young and excited, and you literally have, we'd already, imagined this whole being. We'd imagined this whole family coming to be. And so then it wasn't all of a sudden. So we did, it was like a natural process of going through the miscarriage. I did not have to have any procedures afterwards, which I was grateful for. I know those can be really challenging, but the emotional toll that it took, like that process was, I honestly think it was like a year of grieving after that. Because there wasn't a subsequent pregnancy, I think that probably played into it too. It was just like intensified this loss and then increasing uncertainty over the course of that time. Yeah, it was painful. It really was a painful time.
So you had your loss, and then you didn't get pregnant again?
Yeah, I did not get pregnant again. And so after the year, I'd reached out to my medical doctor and got the referral to the fertility clinic. And then we started doing the assessments and stuff. So nothing of significance came up in the testing. So it was like the unexplained infertility. And so we went forward, and they're like, you're young and you're healthy and everything's, should be fine. And that was kind of like the theme over the course of my whole infertility experience. People like kind of confused why I was there, didn't understand what was going on, myself included. So we went forward and did like 2 natural timed cycles with the monitoring. We ended up doing 6 IUI treatments, which in my opinion, it was too many at the time. You're just like in that hamster wheel of just doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different result. After those 6 IUIs, we moved forward with IVF, and we ended up doing 2 complete cycles of IVF, which was like 7 different embryo transfers. None of them resulted in a pregnancy.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, you've really been through all of it.
Yeah, all the different types of things that you can go through. It's kind of bizarre to just like speak those in those few sentences, because like that's like over the span of a few years that was going on, and even the intensity of any one of those procedures, we know the highs and lows that brings. So yeah, it was a challenging few years for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even down to like the hormone injections and preparing the body, and then obviously the
Yes.
letdown after each time that it didn't happen, then you've got to recover as well. So yeah, that would have been quite difficult.
Yeah.
How did you go with that process, that kind of up and down process?
Probably not well. I that it was yeah, the highs were high and the lows were lows. I can remember like the extreme excitement I have when I was starting something new and different and really being hopeful for the end result of a pregnancy. And then I do remember the intensity and like the depth of the despair that felt when you learn that something did not play out as you were hoping for it to. Um, I know for myself, I'm like a type A person. I like to make things happen. And so, alongside doing my fertility treatments, I was seeing an acupuncturist and seeing a natural, even though I am a naturopathic doctor, I was like seeing a fertility focused naturopathic doctor, and just like doing every single thing I could possibly do. I can remember at the time taking like 25, like a handful, 25 supplements per day, which was like between the multiple practitioners they had me on. And it was just like I was just like in overdrive in hindsight, like just complete overdrive and over functioning, like as a constant stress state that I was in. So I think on the outside, I probably looked like I was functioning fine because I was like working and doing everything that needed to get done. But looking back, I was like flying through life, just like in this elevated state, just trying to manage and do things instead of feel things. It was easier to do all of those things and go to all these appointments than feel the intensity of like the overwhelm I was feeling at the time.
Yeah, and when you got to the end of that kind of period, like how did you make that decision? And did more emotions hit you at that point when you decided that you weren't going to keep going?
Yeah, I would say my emotions kind of leaked out in different times through the process as well. Um, but yeah, when I came to completing the second round of IVF, um, I just knew I was done. I was like, I can see myself like I was just actually in burnout mode. And so I can remember even the last cycle that I was on, the fertility specialist was talking about this whole long intensive process he was going to put me on that was going to induce menopause, and it was going to be like this more than a month long preparatory time before doing the final transfer. And I actually interrupted him while he was explaining all of these things. He's like, hot flashes and night sweats. And I was like, so I'm not going to do that. I'm done. So what's the least invasive protocol that won't interfere with like my chances of this being successful? I don't want to just like wish this away, but I want to do this properly. But there's no chance I'm doing what you're describing you're recommending for me to do. So at that time, and he knew, because at the start of that second IVF, I was already pretty much done, but we decided to do it one more time. And so, yeah, at that time, I was done before I even finished my last round. So when it came as a negative on the testing, I was actually just relieved. Like I could not continue at that pace and with that intensity and with the emotional like intensity. I couldn't carry that on like anymore. So it to me it was really clear that that was my time was done in the fertility treatment world. So I know not everyone's experience is like that. It just in every cell of my body, like it was just like this is like the end. And so that it was relieving for me.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it when you make a decision and you're like, I've had enough now. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
understand why that would be relieving when you found out yeah, it hasn't worked, because then you're like, it's over. I'm done. Like I'm finished. Yeah.
Yes.
Gosh.
Yeah. It felt good in a weird way. And I think the reality is like behind the surface, you're kind of like grieving
Yeah.
this these losses of what you imagined your life to be, what you imagined your experience to be. You're kind of grieving that along the way. And so it wasn't like it all hit me at that time. I think, yeah, the process was over those years.
Yeah. So after that chapter ended, how did you move into the next one?
So actually, when you'd asked me the question, did I always want to be a parent? I meant to mention that prior to us even getting married, my husband and I, we had had the conversation, oh, we'll have like two biological children, but adoption was actually always a part of our family plan. We're like, we'll have two biological children, and then we will adopt two children. In this world where you can imagine your family be whatever it's going to be. So before we knew that we were going to be going through infertility, so when we got pregnant, had our miscarriage, like going through fertility treatments was a natural like next step. And then when we saw that through, our natural next step was then moving towards adoption. So it was always part of our plan, international adoption specifically as well, before we even got married. So we gave ourselves a couple months to just get the clear headspace and give some space between all of the intensity of what we had just been through and gather ourselves. So we actually on purpose just said we're not actually talking about anything to do with family building for a few months to let each of us on our own just kind of process and heal from what we've been through so we can have a clear mind and make decisions that work for us like in a clear headspace. So then we just started the conversation and the process of adoption.
How did you guys sort of start the process? Because obviously you discussed it, you were like, okay, let's do it. Did you go online? Did you call someone? Like how does that process start?
I literally Googled like adoption in Ontario, Canada. And then there's a website that comes up. And then it kind of just breaks down all these different, like, local adoption, local private, local public, international adoption. And then, so yeah, so we kind of went through all of the possibilities and everything. And then we know some people who have adopted as well. So we did kind of have conversations with them throughout this time too. We know a few families who adopted internationally, and so we spoke with them and met with them. Um, yeah, so then it just kind of lined up. We kind of just went with kind of our hearts at that point, and so we chose international adoption from Thailand, and so then we started that process. So then that kind of funnels you into, okay, these are the requirements, these are the steps, these are who you need to contact, and we went from there.
Let's go into the process. So what's the hardest thing that you have to do within the process?
Um, it's not the hardest one thing, it's the amount of things that are required. all together that make it hard. So the nice thing about pursuing adoption and moving through the process of adoption is that you are checking things off and moving yourself forward. Whereas sometimes in fertility, it feels like you're spinning your wheels and you don't know if you're ever going to gain traction. And so at the time and where we were at, it felt really good for us to be like, okay, police check, check, moving forward. We kind of went through that process. So it's not, no one individual task is super challenging, but there are so many tasks that need to be done, and you try to do that in the most efficient way. So I was really motivated at the time, and I kind of took the reins, went through all of the paperwork. You're preparing your paperwork that's going to be submitted then to Thailand. And so you need to do like a home study, and people come, like your adoption practitioner comes to your home multiple times to get to know you, ask questions, make sure that you're like a fit for adoption. And we did like psychological evaluations, medical records, financial record checks. Like it's just kind of combing through, and it all makes sense, right? We're dealing with a very vulnerable population. So it's important that they do that super clean sweep. There were multiple courses that we took. So yes, it's just a lot of different things. No one thing is challenging. It's just the timeline, and then sometimes just waiting for documents, and waiting was the hardest. All that to say, the waiting pieces would be the hardest. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess it would be like any kind of waiting when you really want something and you know it's like within your grasp, and you're like,
Yeah.
just this one. I just have to wait, what, 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Okay, I can wait 2 weeks. And then you get another one and they're like, okay, now we need this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the adoption version of the 2 week wait in fertility. We
Yeah.
had experience time, so
In terms of the process and the waiting and all that, like, do you feel like your profession actually kind of prepared you for doing all the paperwork and jumping through all the hoops?
um I think, yeah, in a way. And I think even more preparatory was like the infertility process. There's hoops you jump through there, and there's different things you go through in the fertility stuff. I feel like that helped. We're used to being patient and waiting and understanding that you really can't control many aspects. What you can control, you kind of latch onto, and what you can't control, you release. Um, I don't know if my actual work did. I'm sure in some ways, just kind of keeping organized and stuff, but
Yeah, paperwork and the courses and
yeah.
training sort of. What were the
Yeah.
courses like for adoption?
You know what? They were really great, actually. There's a course called Pride. It's just like a family, like parenting type of course. And then we did a specific course on like international adoption. So things to be like when you have like an interracial family, and just key components to be mindful of and pay attention to, and bring awareness to as you're building your family this way. But the family course, it was just really helpful, like talking about like attuning to your child and what that looks like. I remember at the time thinking, why do we have to take a parenting course when other people don't need to? So, another expense and another thing you need to do to check off the list. But so just at the time, it just felt a little bit like we shouldn't really have to. But then when we went through it, I'm like, everyone should take a course like this. It was really helpful for us. And we met amazing people there going through the same thing, which is beautiful. It was a really impactful, those were really impactful times for us. Like we actually learned a lot and appreciated it afterwards.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I gotta say, um when you have a baby naturally and you take it home, there is this kind of, what do I do?
Right.
I have this human, and I'm supposed to look after it and do all the things, and okay, no, like you're just shocked that you have that position and you have that child and it's your responsibility. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, having everyone take that kind of course would actually be beneficial. Not that they do that, obviously, but yeah, it would definitely benefit, I think, a lot of people. But yeah, I think we'd be like, oh, well, I don't need that, but it's beneficial. It is.
Even just like different concepts in like attaching to your child and like the what the child needs at different stages of their life. Like it was just a really neat course. And then it was neat to be taking the course alongside other people who are at the same position. So just from the social aspect and working through expectations you have on your kid and that we really shouldn't have that or project that onto kids. And so I can remember this one exercise we did, and I think it's just wise. Like they're like write down, or draw like your the perfect child. What color eyes do they have? What color hair do they have? And what are their personality traits? And what do they like to do? And all the details. Like write all of those things down. And everyone did this individually. And she's like, okay, like so you're looking at this like at this child. Now take the sheet of paper and rip it up totally. And it's just like the concept of we can have all these like subconscious like expectations or hopes and dreams and everything. And it's actually so unfair to be placing it on these children. So it's just this, it was a neat exercise. I'll never forget it. And it was just like, okay, wow, yeah, these are just like individuals that we get to learn and meet and figure out and love and care for and all these things. But they're their own person. And then we are there to support them.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I've got to say, like, as a parent, you have all those things in your head, and I'm sure you got it too. Like you were like, okay,
Yes,
so this kid, the kid we're gonna get, he's gonna be like this, and you do, you can't help it. It's human. But yeah, I think that would be so powerful if like every parent had to go through that before they had that baby arrive or that child arrive to them. Um,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it was great.
yeah. So okay, so you did courses and all this preparation. How long did the process take?
We submitted our paperwork in September 2018. That's when our paperwork had arrived in Thailand. So we started paperwork in February 2018. So it took that length of time and that was as fast as possible to do all the paperwork and courses and assessments and everything prior to. And so that was submitted in September 2018. And then we were matched in February or March 2020
Wow.
was when we got contacted that we were matched with our son. Yeah, just over a year and a little bit. It was supposed to take like 2.5 years. So it was a shorter wait for us at the time. Every country, every year, these like timelines and wait times do change. But ours was faster than expected, than what they had suggested for us to be expecting. And then obviously due to the pandemic, it was a delay for us to travel. We were supposed to travel, I think, in September, and then we ended up traveling in December. So it delayed by a couple of months for us to travel to Thailand. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. Oh, that delay. But that's awesome that, they told you 2.5 years. So you were prepared, or at least like
Yes.
mine kind of that, okay, it's going to take a while. We're going to have to wait. And then it happens
Totally.
earlier. That's a really good story, because I know some people, they actually have to wait a lot longer than they were told. And then it
Yes.
becomes this kind of waiting game, similar to like the infertility journey, where you're just like, when is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? It becomes like a question rather than a knowing.
Yes.
But yeah, that's really great. And what was it like flying to that other country and kind of, just that emotional feeling that you got, like holding the child for the first time, holding your child?
Yeah, it was, yeah, it's a time we'll never forget. and it's an experience for sure we'll never forget. Like, I mean, doing the process anyways is like this intense emotional experience. And then you layer in the timing that we went. So we traveled in December 2020, which was like another wave of the pandemic. So we were like practically the only people on the airplane. Like there's nobody in the airports. When we arrived in Bangkok, Thailand, it was like we're in a movie. Everyone's like in hazmat suits and we're lined up and there's like so much like structure and order. It was just like, honestly, if I didn't have photos of it, I literally would think that didn't happen. That wasn't real. Like, so like just being in an airport, when do you ever go to an airport and there's nobody else there? Like it was like crickets. So bizarre. And on one flight, literally, I could look around and could not see another head. Like in a big airplane, like it was just wild. Um, so then that process, we ended up getting like shuffled to a quarantine hotel. So directly from the airport, we had to go into a vehicle. They drove us to the hotel. They directed us into the elevator and right into our room. And we stayed in our room. We got a suite, so we had a bit more space, but we were in that space for 2 weeks quarantining, and we had food delivered to our door 3 times a day. And we had to get COVID testing like through the time that we were there. It was just like such a bizarre time to be doing the most like intense experience of our life. It intensified things. So yeah, it was bizarre. I can remember during the quarantine, at the time we were actually only 8 minutes away from where my son was. So like we're in this hotel for 2 weeks, 8 minutes away from where he is. And that's just the process we went through. So I can remember thinking, oh, I'm going to do all these things in the 2 weeks. I'm going to, be productive and get all these things done and exercise and do. And it's just like we were just kind of like in this time warp, like what is happening? Can't really function. So yeah, that was wild. And then obviously like meeting our son, so it's just a beautiful time we'll never forget. And he's just perfect and perfectly matched for us. So it's just one of those things where when you're in the thick of infertility or in the thick of building your family, and you hear these stories of like people who go through hard times and then they comes to this like resolution that was like perfectly meant for them, you can't really see that own experience for yourself. But yeah, it is just amazing when life plays out. It really does play out how it's meant to. And for us, it for sure, hands down, was meant for our son in our home. It's wild. He's very similar to me. He's such an amazing little boy that, I mean, he's just such a blessing. We are so grateful and would literally go through everything for sure 5 times over to land where we are now. And so we can, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I'm sure many people as they however they build their family and however that comes to be, you just like are kind of in awe at the end of it, thinking back on the experience that it took to get you to where you are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is like that. Sometimes I think if you haven't been through loss or infertility or going through something like hard to kind of get that family, that the process of adoption and things like that, you do tend to take it for granted a little bit, and you don't look at it as much of a blessing. But like some people still do. I'm not saying no one does, but I certainly didn't until I had my losses. And then it really hit me hard that, they're all blessings and this is amazing. And every child is a miracle. And regardless of whether the child came out of your womb or not, it's a miracle that you even get to be in their life and watch them grow and see them. And kids are amazing.
They're amazing. They're so amazing. When people like meet us or they hear our story or they meet or something, they're like, oh, he's so lucky. And it's just like, no, like we are truly, like in our heart and souls, like we are truly the lucky ones to get to parent this like beautiful little boy. It's it is amazing. They are blessings. That's neat. That's interesting to hear you say from your experience how your mindset changed or how your perspective changed.
Yeah. I didn't expect that. But yeah, as soon as when I lost a child, I was just, wow, I can't believe I didn't see it as much as I see it now. You know, I just had this overwhelming gratitude and feeling of being blessed to have what I had. And I just
Yes.
didn't have that. And I don't understand how I didn't have that before, but I didn't have it. And yeah,
Yeah.
and then I went through what I
It's
went
just
through,
like,
and
yeah, I guess it's just an expectation, right? You just expect that this is happening and then it's happening and then you live your life. But when you realize the intensity and the depth of like the pain and the reality of loss, it really does like amplify this gratitude, this experience of gratitude for what you do have. Yeah, that is for sure the case. And even I find myself sometimes like I'll be folding laundry, something that many people complain about and here. I mean, not that I don't ever complain about doing laundry, because there's way more, even this tiny little being in my home, there's way more laundry. But like when I'm folding clothes, I'm just thinking, like I'm so lucky, like that I have a little boy that fits into these little clothes that I've been like, praying for years. And here I am doing it. Like this is just my normal like Monday night or whatever. I'm folding his laundry and I'm so lucky that I get to do that.
yeah, and it's all those little things, you know, because again, before I was like, oh, laundry, like dishes, there's so many dishes, there's always dishes, like, and getting really amped up about all of this stuff. And then, you know, I go through loss, and then I'm like, I'm lucky. I'm lucky I get to do this many dishes. I'm lucky I have to do so much washing. I'm just, yeah. And there is this, you know, overwhelming gratitude, even as you're folding everything and cleaning everything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, at least I
Your
get to
house
do.
is a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like there was a long time that I would give anything for it. And here I am now with the messy house and with the dishes everywhere. Again, it's like exponentially more when you add one little person into your home. You're like, how do I have 10 plates out after one dinner? But
No, it
yeah,
is. It's amazing how much mess there is as soon as you add one little person into the mix. And they really do just kind of create, and you're just like, great, thanks, mate. I'll clean that up later because I don't have the energy.
oh, I know. They do create. That is that's so true.
Yeah. So emotionally, just from, you know, a mindset kind of place, I know we've sort of just covered some of that. How are you feeling now? Like, how has it been for you in this moment? Are you thinking about maybe adopting again, or are you sort of just going to sit where you're at?
I am very content, like very content from an emotional perspective. I can't even I can't even like relate to the person I was before going through that struggle because I'm just so outside of that now. Um, so that did not last forever. I know some people will continuously carry the hurt and loss, but yeah, I would say from an emotional perspective, I'm like very much at peace. We're the plan is that we will not adopt again. We're like really feel full and content with our son. The thought that I at one time wanted 4 kids is just bananas to me. Like I would not, that's just not in the cards. Being a working parent is a lot. So all of our attention kind of goes towards him and what we have going on. So yeah, I feel very content and very grateful for that contentment because there were many years where like, yeah, I couldn't see my way out of it. One thing that I did, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but
Oh, you
so
didn't.
I was very because while I was going through my process, I was very like action oriented and doing oriented. Once we were closing out or like winding down the IVF stuff, I started like just writing down a bunch of my thoughts of like what I had learned or lessons from infertility. And I just kind of was started filling a notebook. So I did end up writing a book on the emotional process of like what I had thought, kind of lies that infertility led me to believe, and then mindset shifts that allowed me to kind of work through it and heal from that. And so that's kind of like a personal project I took on towards the end of my, like I think starting in the second round of IVF, and then through the wait time for adoption. I just kind of invested myself in this process of kind of writing out my story, but more like the emotional mindset shifts that I went through to get myself to kind of to where I am now, in the sense that I'm like, feel like I've healed from that season of my life for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sent me that book
Oh, I
actually.
did.
I
Okay,
started
good.
reading it. Yeah, and it's really great. It's so well written. It
Thank you.
it just feels really nice, and it's like you're chatting with me. Like it's like you were talking with me in through the book, and it was really nice to kind of get started. I haven't finished it yet because
Life
this
with
event,
kids.
but I do have plans to finish it because it was just what I read. It was great, and I'm gonna link it down below because I'm hoping lots of people want to read it because it was really beautiful. And I think when we share our journey, we really help so many people just through that kind of I went through this, and if you're going through it too, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because you're right, you can get very blinded when you're in it and feel like there's no way out and you're in the dark, and it's this hard slog. But then when you do, you get this sort of hindsight, and this kind of, you look back and I did that, and then you have this beautiful kid in front of you and you're just like, this is my child. And it is amazing.
Yeah, it is so true. And you do gain perspective as you go through different things in life. And so when you're the one in it, it was almost like what would I have wanted to know, or what would have been helpful, like kind of a companion as I was going through it. Because you have all the specialists and everybody that you see, you have your team, and so you rely on them for the medical information. It's not like a how to get pregnant type of book. It's like the emotional process, which like we all kind of go through variations of similar experiences, like kind of potentially feeling inadequate, like that's something wrong with us. And even if it's not a conscious thought, subconsciously that can be the case. And so it's just, deconstructing. It was helpful for me. I think I like hearing that it's like having sitting with me, because that was my intent, to be like a friendly companion to someone going through it.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the emotions, because we do seem to feel a lot of the same emotions: guilt, anger, fear,
Yeah.
almost like a resentment, usually towards ourselves.
Yeah.
And like it's all very, very similar, obviously varying degrees depending on where you're at, but it does seem to be the case. And most women that I've spoken to have gone through a period of time where they've shut off. They're like, I'm not feeling this. I don't want to feel this right now.
Yes.
So it's like protection, right? Protecting yourself. And unfortunately, you still have to deal with it at some point.
Yes.
But what would you recommend for women who are going through this to do during the infertility process, if they're trying IVF or anything like that, or even during the adoption process?
I think a really important thing is connecting with other people going through the same thing. So I know like there's different support groups and community groups, and I was resistant to attending because it's almost just like you're outing yourself to people that you don't know. And it's just like, it was just bizarre because you're walking into a room of people who are also going through the same thing. But to me, I felt some shame around my infertility personally. And but literally just walking into a space of people who you don't know but instantly understand was a really comforting thing. I wish I had done that earlier, because you walk into these clinics and a lot of them are really busy for a reason. It's a common issue. And so there's some sense of like, okay, I'm not the only one going through this. But when you're actually talking and having like heart-to-heart conversations with people who you don't have to explain why you're angry or sad or upset about a pregnancy announcement or whatever. It's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you went through that. It's an awful feeling, just to have validation in your experience. and have other people who can empathize and understand, it was much more helpful than I had imagined for it to be. And I would recommend that for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds really nice. And I think a lot of us are terrified to join a group, because then you have to like talk about how you feel, and sometimes you don't know. And yeah, but
Yes.
I'm guessing it's kind of like one of those things where you can go in there and not say anything for the first few meetings if you really want to not say anything yet.
Totally.
How was your journaling? Did you find journaling like really helpful during that time as well? Like, was that something that you would recommend people do?
I think that's it's a helpful strategy for sure. I didn't utilize it to the best of its ability at the time. I almost like super journaled by writing my book later. I did in my book have like journal prompts at each chapter, just because I do think it is helpful to like have that self-awareness. I did a lot of like reflection and stuff like internally, but I think there's a great value to actually put that on paper, write it down. There's a therapeutic process that's involved with that. So I do think that journaling through your experiences is a way of expressing and releasing all this emotion that gets built up. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm guessing you forgot a lot of the details and some of the things that you went through as well, because obviously if you don't write it all down, we're only human. We don't have amazing brains sometimes in terms of memory.
yeah. Don't ask me what medications I was taking. I don't know.
Well, that there should be paperwork for that somewhere. You might be able to
Somewhere.
find out. I don't know if you want to.
No, I've left that behind me.
We'll leave that door closed.
Yes.
Yeah, so how, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk on your husband's behalf, but how did he go with the process that you know of?
I would say we're different in that I'm more of like an extrovert and he's definitely more of an introvert. So he can do a lot of like internal processing with his experience. And I think it's different challenges, right? For the partner who's not aiming to carry. Um, it's a lot of supporting something, but then not knowing how to always. So, and then feeling bad that I had to go through all of those procedures and processes, and his experience was a bit easier, like medically easier, but emotionally the same, right? Same losses, same uncertainty and stuff. So on the outside, probably like he seemed pretty like calm, cool, and collected, but I do know it like took a toll from a stress perspective for sure. Um, just yeah, the uncertainty and him watching me go through like the egg retrieval and things like that. That I know that was hard for him.
When it comes to the two processes of, infertility, IVF, IUI, and all that versus adoption, what what was the stress level like, and what was the emotional turmoil that you go through in terms of the process? Which one, if any, were sort of lighter on you?
Adoption was definitely lighter, like definitely. Only because like you don't know, you're not matched with your child at the start, so you don't have that like emotional connection yet. And paperwork is a lot more like it's logical, systematic, you have control over it, you do it, like if you put the effort in, you get the outcome that you're desiring. Like so with the effort equals outcome, when that takes place, like I'm feeling good. When the effort you're putting in does not equate to the outcome you're hoping for, that's when things become really challenging, especially for myself. I think for a lot of people. So the paperwork, and then we could divide and conquer that, right? So it's like, okay, you take this part, I'll do this. So dividing and conquering, which you can't do. You can't be like, you take these injections, I'll go to this appointment. It would be nice if. So that process for sure was better, smoother, more realistic expectations surrounding it. We knew the outcome as we were going through it.
It sounds like it was almost therapeutic in terms of, you know, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and ticking off that checklist, because you did have full control, which is completely different from everything I've heard about IVF and IUI and all that. And I know the the doctors and things tend to have a lot of control, but you know, as the woman going through it, you don't really feel that at all. So
Yeah. It's interesting. I think, there was probably an element of a therapeutic impact by regaining that control and moving through it at a pace that we were aiming for. Yeah.
yeah. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to sort of go into your profession and sort of what you do, looking more at the loss space. How have you found your experience helpful in helping your patients?
I think when we go through any challenge in life, it gives us perspective, and develops like a sense of compassion towards people who are also struggling when you have deeply struggled yourself. So when I'm sitting with people who've lost, in any capacity, having that, personal experience in the fertility world and also personally in my family, you know how people are feeling, or you can connect with people more deeply that way. So I do find, as far as connecting with people, it's certainly helped me with that. And so I can have more compassion, more empathy towards people who are struggling. Yeah. So yeah, I see some people who go through infertility. I see, wide variety of different health conditions as a general, like, kind of family practice. But yeah, going through challenges helps with, like, a human being connecting with another human being. So I appreciate that outcome from what I
Yeah.
went through too.
Yeah, I've actually had that from a fair few ladies recently where they've said, you know, obviously I don't want to have gone through what I've gone through, but at the same time, I really like who I've become because I'm more
Yeah.
compassionate and I'm more caring. Was there a
Yeah.
real difference between like your what you were doing in your profession, like before you went through this fertility journey and after? Like, was there a big change in terms of how you conducted your services and treatments to people?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've really thought about that. Nothing overt, nothing that I intentionally shifted, but I do wonder, and maybe that's just the state of the world too. I do wonder, I have seen a shift in my practice where I've seen a lot more like mental health conditions. So like people coming to see me with, anxiety and depression, and utilizing naturopathic medicine as a treatment option for them. I do see more people in that realm, of medicine. I don't know if that's like as a result of them feeling like that empathy and compassion towards me, or the state of the world that we live in. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, maybe so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, or maybe they just feel comfortable talking to you because they just feel that kind of compassion and the
Yeah.
energy let off or something. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I always find it very intriguing to find out, you know, what's the changes, because obviously when we go through loss, when we go through anything involving trauma or anything like that, it tends to change us as women, as people. A lot of
Yes.
women do struggle with the change after they have lost a child, or after they have gone through infertility and they've closed that door. So I was just wondering, like, was there a sort of change in yourself as well?
Yeah, I think, there's probably more of a like maturity and depth when you go through challenges. And so yeah, there's likely that would have been the change. I think the not liking yourself, I can connect to pieces of that as I was like, fumbling my way through the challenges of infertility. I'm like, yeah, I don't like that part of myself, or the emotions and intensity of what I was going through. But then when things soften out and level out on the other side of things, I'm good with her.
Yeah. And you know what? I can feel that. I can see that. Like, you do look content. You do look calm and at peace. You don't look like a lot of the women I've been talking to who are, they're in the battle zone. They're still going through it. They're doing the hard yards and pushing through. And it is a really tough time when you're in it.
Really frazzling, tough time when you're in it. And so I've been there too. So yes, I'm calm and at peace now. And I'm so grateful for that just because I have really been in those tumultuous times too. So when I meet people when they're in the thick of that, I can still remember being there too. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Just to wrap it up, if you could go back in time being who you are now and speak to you when you were going through all of that, what advice would you give yourself? What would you say to yourself?
Try softer. Don't be so intense. They're like, just try and move forward, but have more of a softness around that intensity. Just like be softer with myself, be softer with my process, just be softer through it. There's like, it's so intense and it's so elevating and so stressful that we just try to grasp it, or for myself, I'll speak for myself. Like I was just trying to grasp at any element of the things I could control. And so it was just like, it was a bit of a spiraling experience. And so if I could have just, moved through that and just been softer and lighter with myself along the way, instead of trying to just like barge my way through the process, I probably would have required less recovery afterwards. Um, but that's just kind of who I am too. So I don't know if I would have accepted that advice, but if anyone's like, right in the thick of it and just like powering through and firing on all cylinders, like if there's a way you can soften in any aspect of your life to just give yourself a bit of a break, I think there's value in that.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's definitely something that I think a lot of women will connect with. Every woman I've talked to who has gone through losses, they say there is just this push and this want and this thirst for like, no, I will get pregnant. I'm gonna make this happen. And it kind of becomes this narrow path, and there might not be what you want at the end. And yeah, when you go on that journey, it can be very intense, and you don't give yourself breathing space. Yeah, but that's great advice, and coming from someone who's now on the other side of it,
Yes.
and living that life that you, or partly that you wanted. Obviously it's always different from what we ever dream of, right? It's not the same as I'm like imagining. I mean, I had kids naturally and everything, but it's not anything like what I imagined at all. Like, I don't think parenting can be imagined and dreamt of and thought of before you're in it.
It's part of something that I was like observing and learning. Like, and I gain insight from working with people all day, every day too. And it's just like no one in the fertility world, yes, no one's life is as expected, but quite literally, like no one person is living a life that they expected and imagined in every capacity. There's usually some or lots or all of it is just like I never imagined this to be whatever, good or bad. I just like, life's just, it unfolds in front of us. It's not like the path that we've predetermined to walk through.
Yeah, it's not like a book that we've written the end of already. It's
Yeah.
someone's still writing it. Still coming up with the plot twists and they're not quite sure. And
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
well, thank you so much for speaking with me. And I'm going to be sharing all your links, your website and your book and anything else. Please send me anything that you want to share with everyone here. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Ella. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, and have a lovely rest of your day. I don't know, what time was it over there? Morning?
10:30 in the morning. Yeah.
Well, enjoy your morning. I'm gonna go to bed now.
You go to bed. Good sleep.
Thank you. I'll see ya. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.